Tom here from Lawrence Systems, and we're here to talk about the iX System TrueNAS M50 that's here in front of us. And I've actually pulled one of the motherboards out. And I said one because, yes, this has dual redundant motherboards. And that is pretty cool. And before we jump into that, we'll talk, at least step back a little, say, what's FreeNAS versus TrueNAS? I know this is the first question a lot of people have. So FreeNAS, completely open source operating system. I've done plenty of videos on my channel. You're very familiar with it, maybe. And it is an excellent open source software-defined storage solution that's running on ZFS. And the question and comment seems to come up a lot on those videos of, well, is it ready for prime time? Can it be used? Does it have commercial support, et cetera, et cetera? And the answer is yes and absolutely. Now, we have actually seen large enterprises using FreeNAS, but those of them that would like to have paid support options and want those, 5 nines of uptime and absolutely want a turnkey solution, hardware, software, with support, with agreements, with warranties on all of this, if there's any problem, and then to go a step further, dual redundant failover motherboards, along with, up to 10 petabytes of storage. And currently what you see outfitted here has over 250 terabytes of storage. So we'll dive into that in a second here. But you were looking for that turnkey solution. TrueNAS is the commercially supported version of FreeNAS. The interface you're familiar with, it is absolutely, this is something interesting you can look up, the most tested NAS software out there. It has a very large user base, and they're taking the FreeNAS code and rolling it into TrueNAS. Now, the difference really is in the support. It's all the same thing you're familiar with, but one of the things they do slightly different at TrueNAS is TrueNAS is several months behind on FreeNAS, so they roll out a update in FreeNAS, and a couple months later, in case there's any issues or any bugs, then they roll out the updates for TrueNAS. They're mostly the same. There's slight nuance differences. With TrueNAS, you have a few extra tabs in there for support. You also, when you buy a TrueNAS, you can purchase an entire support package at different levels of how quickly you'd like a ticket responded to, warranties on the drives, the hardware, the motherboards, and agreements to get these things back up and running for mission-critical systems. So if you are a decision maker in that IT space and you're looking for a FreeNAS solution that you couldn't pitch to the C-suite because they go, that doesn't have support or agreements, this is that solution that you can pitch to them that's going to have absolute support agreements and guarantees, and it works really well. So we've done both of these in the field. We've deployed TrueNAS solutions to clients. We have deployed FreeNAS solutions to clients. Like I said, really the main difference is that extra uptime and the hardware you get. Speccing out a system can be very difficult. It's a wonderful hobby for if you're trying to build something, but you don't necessarily want to, hack something together when you're doing it in a data center. That can be a little bit dicey. You end up being the sole person supported. Doesn't mean it can't be done. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But it's something to consider that you really have to put the time in and do it. And when it comes to the level of engineering that went into this, this is really impressive. So doing dual motherboards and a NAS server is no easy feat. What they have done here is a lot of engineering to take this motherboard and keep it in sync simultaneously with the other one connected to all the same SAS drives at the same time. That being said, this is how they're able to achieve a redundancy where if one board fails, the other one takes over. This actually allows you to go a step further. You can do updates during production. You can say which one of these motherboards is the master and which one is the backup, and at that point you can load firmware updates, you can load the updates on it, you can service the board, and if one of these boards goes bad or if a firmware update, software update fails, no problem, it's already running on the other one and they can be switched in real time, like I said, in production. This means without having to wait till those inopportune times and spend your Christmas morning updating a server because it's the only time the company shuts down, you can go, cool, I can just do this in the 3 o'clock on Friday and not worry about it. In case someone's going to say never update on a Friday, but, live dangerously. How big is it? We'll at least cover that. So I have a tape measure here. This does have about a 30-inch depth. I just want to, because the camera might be obscuring it, and it does weigh a lot. So this thing's heavy. I'm very careful not to move it much. Now, let's zoom in a little bit here. Let me actually slide the box out of the way. Well, we'll show the drives real quick. If someone wants to see this. It's nice. The drive slide in and out, nice, easy. It's well made. Everything's well fitted. Matter of fact, one of the things they do is when they package all the drives, they ship them all not in the box. Everything comes really well packaged in these styrofoam holders. Everything's wrapped. It's really, really well done. No problems at all doing it. Everything's like well machined. This doesn't feel like, you know, cheap or chintzy. And I did not snap that in because I wasn't looking. Wait, there. Click. No effort putting it in. It doesn't. So build quality really well on this. Now, I will spin it around once so we can show how the dual motherboards look. Hey, 250 terabytes still weighs a lot because we, you know, got some in there. And by the way, and we'll pop this out real quick because I thought this was kind of cool. This isn't just a little fan that popped out for convenience. We also have some more drives in here. And this spot has 4 SSDs in it, so they can slide out right like this. So now, you know, 4 more spots to store some drives. We do have dual power supplies. It's pretty simple there. And then this is toolless. There's just a little screw. It slides down, and this was able to slide right out. And it's, you know, fairly substantial and heavy. All right, let's get this out of the way and take a closer look at this motherboard on here. So when we take a closer look at the connectors on the back, this is some of the, you know, magic, so to speak, the extra engineering that's really going in there, that TrueNAS was designed to work with this hardware to make the redundancy work. So it's not like just the tray slides out and it's just a motherboard tray for convenience of service. You're talking about a system that was integrated with the software to work. So if you wanted to load TrueNAS on your own hardware, there's not much point in it because your hardware wouldn't have this. This is, like I said, some specially designed hardware. Spin it around the other way. Makes a lot of noise. We have 2 10 gig connectors over here. So the 2 10 gig connectors, we have the 40 gig QSFP and the SAS expander over here. Properly outfitted, this will support over 700 drives. So yeah, you can put 10 petabytes right now based on current drive sizes of storage together for this particular unit. Now let's take a look at the overhead and a little bit closer look at the motherboard. So you see we have these dual Xeons right here. We have all the fans, which the fans are removable. And on these nice little rubber dampers, they just slide up carefully. No, I'm not going to pull it out all the way. But yeah, completely not too hard to remove. They're not socketed like drop-in ones, but you know, you're not replacing them. Ideally, you're not replacing them that often. That being said, that's what provides the cooling for this first processor. Then the second processor further back has its own dedicated fan. And you can see all the drive connectors and the controller cards, how they connect right here, and the extra expanders that are in there, and how they route back up to those edge connectors that we talked about right in the front. With the QSFP card, we do have 40 gigs of connectivity in this, but obviously this is a standard board and you can put different cards depending on the needs and how you want to connect it up. I do like in the back here having those 2 10 gigs built right in. Now what we're going to be doing here for my tests and my demos is going to be doing this with the 10 gigs. That's just what we happen to have here at the office. So we won't be able to get the full speed that this can actually do, but it has been certified with Veeam, Citrix, and VMware, and there's plenty of independent tests that have pushed it to its limits to prove it can do an incredible amount of IOPS and absolutely high performance in the storage. So how does this motherboard go in? Well, let's get that plugged in real quick. So the motherboard slides in like this. Very carefully, while some TrueNAS engineer nervously watches me slide it and go, don't shove it too hard. I can picture someone saying that. And I have been very careful. That's why I had this out. I didn't want to slide it in and out multiple times. I wanted it to go in very carefully and slide it in, and away we go. They're durable, but you don't want to abuse any of this stuff. This is very expensive, very high end, and this demo unit is, you know, here for us to do some demos and do some software on, provided by them as a demo unit. So unfortunately, I got to return it. But while it's here, we are going to be doing some videos with it. But I got to make sure it all stays in nice working order so we can do some of our failover tests. And I'm not going to do it, like I said, in this video. There's going to be some future videos where I dive deeper into it. But we'll fire it up and at least talk about the software, and let's hear what it sounds like fired up. So I moved the system over to the rack. It's installed, it's running, everything's good to go. But I also wanted to have it, I actually pulled the rack closer to me and the microphone's right there, so you can kind of get an idea of the noise. People always ask me, well, how loud is it? I don't have a decibel meter, but it's kind of nice to say, well, can Tom continue doing his video and talking over it? And from this distance, it's not bad. I'm gonna push it back to push the noise a little bit further back, and then we'll jump into the software. Now, one of the things I'll point out is on the ears on the front of this is each controller, not one power button for both controllers, but controller 1 and controller 2 controlled from each side of the ears. So now let's log in and take a look at the IPMI lights out management here. And this is nice. The first thing we're gonna do is we have power down, power off, reset. We're logged in, it's got the IP address at the top. We have the server health we can look at, sensor readings, and this is individual. There's one of these for each one of the motherboards. We're going to log into one, they're all pretty much the same. And if you did notice that there's some blinking lights in the front that has some issues, that's because we have not gone through the setup yet, which is why we're not going to dive into the, other than just doing an introduction to the TrueNAS software. There's going to be separate videos where we dive further into it. Once we have it all configured and I reach out to their team and set it up, they're waiting on me. We have the health event log, current power consumption on a per motherboard basis. So a lot of nice features they have in here. Remote control, I like this a lot. HTML5. So here we go, we can launch and get there. Yeah, IO errors. Those are it's not set up yet. That's why we have some IO errors. We haven't set up the HA or anything. It's waiting to be done. But without any stupid consoles of Java or anything weird, right through the browser, you can access at the command prompt to be able to do things, record, macro, options, users, capture, or we have the power control there. So, and it does have the virtual media option, maintenance options for firmware, factory default, etc. But let's get over here and look at the TrueNAS itself. So right here, platform is TrueNAS M50 HA, and we're going to do our failover video separate, but you'll be able to initiate failover and switch between the controllers. It's going to give me a warning right now that we can't do that because it's not configured. As you can see, the HA currently is disabled. But like I said, this looks a lot like the FreeNAS software. Matter of fact, it looks exactly like it. Please note though, jails are missing. They don't come with the hypervisor or the jails inside of here. These are dedicated to be storage servers, so those are omitted from there. And that's another difference between FreeNAS and TrueNAS, is not having those as an option in there. Now, if you want to look real quick at like the processor that's in there, because I said I'd cover that, is an Intel Xeon Silver 4114 CPU at 2.2 gigahertz. So we have 40 threads in here. So that's an impressive amount of power. So more than enough power to run quite a few virtual machines over iSCSI. It's not going to choke. It's going to be able to perform very, very well at very high speeds with a very demanding data sets on it. We'll take a look at the pool, how it's created right now. 124 terabytes available, and let's view the disks inside of here. And we can see our boot pool, which was provided by SATA DOMs. I didn't point them out, but they were in there for the hardware. Then we have all these wonderful drives, these 10.9 terabyte available, but they're the 12 terabyte Western Digital data center drives that this shipped with. And these are those drives in the back. So I pointed out that there's a few drives that you can get to from the back. Those are also attached to both back planes, so they're absolutely part of the system. These ones with the DA right here is a few SSDs that are in there that we're going to be configuring for some different options. We'll test some caching and Z-log, the zero intent log. By the way, these ones in the back are the NV connectors, so NVMe connectors on there. So a couple important notes about that. So this concludes part one of the video of getting started with it, what the hardware looks like, which a lot of people have been asking me about. I wanted to get this video out there. We'll do separate videos, and I'll probably be doing it in my office because I don't, I know people want to know how loud it is, but not everyone wants to listen to a software video with that humming along in the background. I don't know if it's going to stay here in our studio or we're going to put it in our rack in the back when we do the testing, but we're going to bring some other servers to it, do some connections, do some VM testing, and of course, the fun part, do some of that torture testing and show just how that high availability works and talk about it and break that down a little bit more detail, because that's what's real important to people is when you want to put these in is, not just how reliable is the hardware, but can the hardware survive a fault? How fault tolerant is it? And that's where things get really impressive with it. And that's one of those key things, is keeping that uptime in case you have a fault on one of these. All right, and look for the part two coming up right after I reach out to them and get this configured and get all the HA set up and integrated into our network. Thanks.